Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to talk about a little on financial aid and how colleges work with financial aid. Our guests today are Rob Bacino and Martin Nielsen from Premier College Funding. Welcome, gentlemen.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
Before I get started, I usually ask everyone, where they went to school, what college did they go to. So if you guys can tell our audience out there.
Sure, absolutely. I graduated from Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania in 1991, and interestingly enough, a psychology and sociology major.
Wow. Martin?
Yeah, I was a little before that. I graduated from Rutgers University right in New Brunswick in 1988. Economics, finance kind of background, and been at it ever since.
Great. Now, gentlemen, how did you get started in Premier College Funding? Is it a consultant type of service? Is it a business type service of some sort?
That's a good question. We created the company about 4 years ago, mostly in demand to a lot of our clients coming to us with specific questions on financial aid and financial planning surrounding the whole college process. And I guess it was just having a group of clients of a certain age with their children coming up, and all of a sudden now these questions were being posed to us. And as a financial planner, it really is a subsection of financial planning that has to be addressed more specifically, because it's a whole, at least what we found, a whole different set of information that was necessary to really address that concern. So we decided to create the company, and it's been very useful for a lot of families who are working with us to actually work with them throughout the whole process.
And how do you get started with a family? How do you find them?
We do a lot of public workshops where people will come and we'll do about an hour-long presentation with just some basics on how the financial aid system works and which types of categories people might fall into in terms of qualifying for aid. We find a lot of families think that because of their circumstances they may not qualify for aid, and they therefore don't even go through the process at all, which can ultimately hurt their ability to qualify for aid that they thought they might otherwise not have gotten.
So at the college level, how does financial aid actually work?
Well, I mean, a lot of the colleges have their own endowments that they are allowed to give out to individual families as they see fit. There's also state and government aid, state and federal aid, I should say, that really can also be specifically geared towards different families who have different needs. We try to work with the families, and as Martin was saying, help them understand that it makes sense for them to apply just to see what their situation will be viewed as from the different colleges.
So do some families just don't apply at all?
They don't. Yeah, it's as you were saying, I make too much money, or I have too much in the way of assets. I'll just won't bother going through the process.
What they don't realize then is that oftentimes disqualifies them from getting what's called merit aid, again, the money that the schools oftentimes give out regardless of your financial need, but a lot of times that is dependent upon you filing for, or going through the process of filing for the need-based aid.
And how early does someone usually start the process?
It runs the gamut. I mean, there's a lot of individuals who are very proactive with children who are in 9th or 10th grade, and then you'll have the individuals who come to us right about now in the senior year, where it's becoming a very anxiety-ridden issue with them, and it's, please help, we need to go through this whole process on an accelerated basis. So it can be quite diverse in when people actually work with us.
So if I'm a parent and I come to you guys, what's the process that you take with that parent?
The first meeting we usually have with a family is just a consultation to learn more about the family situation.
And is that free?
Yeah, yep. It's a no obligation, no cost initial consultation where we ask the families to share with us their financial information and a lot of information about the student, so we can try to determine whether or not we can actually be of value to that family. We don't take on a lot of people who will come sit down with us, because we determine that there is no way we can help them in terms of getting additional aid if that is their primary reason for coming to see us.
So someone that is already gone through the process once or something like that, maybe they're looking for a service like yourselves?
Sure, no, absolutely. I would say about 25% of the families who we work with are actually families who've gone through the process once and realized that they either didn't do it correctly or didn't even apply at all, and saying, oh boy, I wish I had done something different. So oftentimes it's a child going into their sophomore year in college who is approaching us and saying, this time I want to do it correctly. And inevitably we find there's a lot of those individuals who have other family, other children coming up behind that. So it's doubly important to address that concern.
So if a child and a family don't know where they're going, do you have some kind of process that you take for that family to figure out what schools are eligible and what schools aren't?
Yeah, we do have programs where we can sit with the student and the families if the parents want to be involved in the college selection as well, based on either majors or area, demographic kind of information.
So you can tell the family that?
Yeah, we can help point them in a direction. We're not actually a college counselor, but we can help if they, based on input from them, the types of schools they're looking for, and we can combine that with the financial side of it to say, okay, based on what you're telling us now, here's a list of schools you might want to consider.
Gotcha. And now, how does the process work where, let's say it's a large school with a large tuition compared to a state school with a smaller tuition? Is there any difference between someone going to a private school compared to a public school?
Yeah, actually, getting back to the subject of endowments, a lot of private schools have larger endowments, which they also control their ability to dole it out as they see fit. So there's various different additional forms sometimes a family would have to file to really illustrate their profile to the college admission group, and really be able to say, okay, here is our profile, we really do need aid, and oftentimes we do find that the larger or the private schools do give out more aid,
Really?
which is surprising. A lot of it, when you actually see the ticket price of say a private school is running $55,000, and the amount of aid that you can get could be quite substantial. It also puts it in the realm of the public schools, which shocks a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of times we get families come to us saying initially something like, well, we're only looking at the state schools because we think that's all we can afford, and they're typically looking only at what's called the cost of attendance, that sticker price of the school, when in reality it may actually cost them less net out of pocket to attend what on the face of it looks to be a much more expensive school, like Rob said, a $55,000 or $60,000 school could actually cost you less out of pocket than the state school that might be listed as a $30,000 school.
So how do the colleges work it out? Is there some type of family contribution that they have to figure out? Is that how financial aid works?
Well, there is what's called the expected family contribution, which, based upon various demographics of your situation with your income, your assets, how many people are in school, will dictate what that expected family contribution is. And that's really held consistently amongst all the different colleges that you're expected to bring to the table.
And that's fully on income itself?
No, it's actually based on a lot of different factors, based upon each individual family's profile, if you will, and saying, okay, here's what we look like, assets, income, number of children in school at the time, things like that. So yeah, each person is different, each family is different. So you really need to understand what that expected family contribution is before you start going after the different schools and saying, okay, which one is likely to actually give more aid.
So is it better for a family to save money for their kids? Or is it better for a family not to save money for their kids?
I think we find, Rob, that roughly 10% of the families who come to us have actually saved enough to pay for 4 years of school. So it's the large majority who actually are looking for some additional creative ways to help fund that, which is probably their biggest expense besides buying their homes.
And how much do you usually save for a family?
Well, I mean, we can't say for sure specifically. Each family's different, on average, and we can't, in every instance, help a family get financial aid either. So as each family is different, that would run the gamut of various different amounts.
Really?
Yeah. So it's certainly something we, as Martin had mentioned, we will not take on a client or a family unless we can materially benefit their situation better, or make their situation better. So, like anything, it depends on the family.
Now, how do our audience, how do they find someone like yourselves? Is it something where they look online, or is it, some other way?
Well, you can definitely find us online at premiercollegefundingllc.com. That's one place to find us. We will do various different workshops, as Martin was saying, throughout New Jersey over the course of probably the 10-month college season, which we consider between September and June, I guess is the time.
May,
frame.
June, we typically wind down on the workshops.
Right. So it's, and of course, if you want to give us a call, I think our number is, hopefully can appear on screen at some point. But in any case, it's one of those things that the sooner the better, if you can, because there's a lot of different aspects to this that you want to plan for. Oftentimes we see a lot of families who will bring only a limited number of colleges to the table just because they're not familiar. And what we try to do is work with them to give them other ideas and say, well, perhaps if you're considering a college of this nature, you may want to consider a few other ones. And really have an understanding of what the financial need of the family is, but also what the colleges can bring to the table based upon the family bringing something to the table.
So how much is out there with colleges? How much do colleges give? Is there a certain amount that, the United States government gives out to colleges?
The magic number is at 165 billion, I think,
Yeah,
is
I think all
the
financial
total
aid
number of all financial aid annually.
For all the colleges in the United States.
That's
So
a-
basically families can, as long as they're applying, there's some way of getting money.
Well, no, I mean, it's actually dependent upon the family. I mean, as much as I'd like to say, yes, there's 165 billion, and as long as you apply, you'll get something, not every family will get something.
Really?
No, unfortunately, it's, as you're getting back to your, should they save for college or not save for college, believing that if you don't illustrate asset or money in the bank, then you should get aid. Well, it depends on the family itself. So unfortunately, there is no one hard and fast rule that says everybody gets aid if they apply. But we think in the situation that every family should do is at least go through the financial aid process to see if they can qualify for it. Because you'd be surprised.
And what are some of the ways that families can benefit from your advice that you give them? Is there any way of helping that student out so there is a way of maybe getting some money at the college level?
There are ways through some strategic planning where we can help a family reduce that expected family contribution number, which would again potentially lower their expected contribution and
is there
make them
some kind
qualify
of
for additional
equation
aid.
on that?
Again, that's very specific to each family, but it depends on which type of assets they might own, how they're titled, what types of vehicles they're currently in, how each school oftentimes looks at a different asset. They don't all look at them the same.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I've always heard of families always talking about a 529 plan.
Right.
Is that something that a family needs to do as well?
I don't think there's ever a reason not to do a 529 plan because you never know what your situation is going to be. There's a lot of families who we will sit down with who have saved a significant amount of money in their 529 plan, and their situation is really probably better served having saved all that money rather than hoping not that they would be getting financial aid by not saving any money whatsoever. So it's, as we said, there's probably 10% of the individuals that we'll meet will have fully saved by that time their children are going to college the money that's necessary for the tuition.
Really?
So it's one of those things also that you don't want to hope. You want to have a plan going in, which is why the sooner you can start looking at this whole process, even as early as 9th grade, as far as the kid in school, it makes sense to consider.
So to get back to your answer on one of the questions was a family that has all their money saved for that student.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that family can do that you can tell our audience? Maybe there's a situation where they're able to get some money at the college level, maybe save some of that money. Is there anything that you guys have that would give them some kind of information?
Well, I think that's probably best addressed by sitting down with us, to look at that specific situation in more detail. using a broad generalization probably would be inappropriate to make that at this point.
Okay.
But it's a good question because we're constantly told that there's this gigantic amount of student debt out there, which it's getting larger at this point. And you don't want to be taking on more loans than you have to, so you really want to be well versed in what you're getting into when you're looking at the whole process. And while there is no hard and fast rule, I think there is a hard and fast rule that says, hey, know what you're doing more than anything and do it sooner rather than later, because ultimately that will arm you with enough ammunition to hopefully address the whole process more concretely and confidently.
And you also said that someone should come to you as early as ninth grade. Are there those families that contact you 7th or 8th grade and say, is there anything I can do?
Not that many, no. I would say that probably ninth grade would be the earliest it makes sense, unless there's some unique circumstances surrounding it.
Okay, so usually no one is going below that. They're usually coming to you when their son or daughter goes into high school.
Yeah.
Usually we find the kids haven't thought too much about school at a ninth grade level, or certainly before that. But when they roll around to sophomore, junior year, it starts to get on their radar a little bit, and that's when we can work with them on that the college admissions kind of counseling or matching to help them point or open their eyes to what the possible schools they might want to consider are.
And now, do you work with these kids all the way through college?
Yes, actually, when we are working with clients, there's a lot of work you can imagine the first year because it's understanding their situation. But then we're working with them each year because financial aid does have to be applied for each year that you're going back into school. So it's something that we want them to feel that there's a confidence and a continuity associated with the whole process because things change. People get downsized. Strange things happen, inheritances come in which would change the scenario. All these things really need to be addressed each year and say what's different, good or bad, and really understand what that means for their financial aid situation.
Now, what's the difference between your service and a parent doing it themselves?
Well, like anything, I mean, I would also take the approach of someone doing your taxes. If that individual does nothing but taxes each year, they're going to be well versed and understand sort of the nuances, some of the changes that have happened in the last year, and really apply those to the tax preparation of that year for that person. So certainly there's that ability for us to bring what we've learned over the years and the efficiency that we bring to the table to benefit the family. So that's one area, but also the timing. A lot of people will come to us and say, I find working with you really allows me to focus on other things and not feel like I'm missing something. Because a lot of people are stressed nowadays and a lot of people don't have the time. So sometimes we will be the individual who are working with the family and making sure that everything gets done on time in a fashion that they feel that there's a confidence associated with it, as opposed to just kind of winging it and hoping to get it done between football games and things like that. So.
That's amazing. So really you guys take control over the financial aid piece. Mm-hmm. What do you do? I know financial aid, you usually go online, you fill it out online. Mm-hmm. Do you guys take over that particular portion of it?
That's coming up on us very quickly right now. You can begin filing as early as January 1st for what's called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid.
Okay.
Unlike your taxes, you don't want to wait to the last minute to get involved or get started doing that because a lot of the aid is actually given out on a first come, first served kind of basis too. So what we do with our families is work with them, even using estimated data. If their actual asset and income data for 2013 is not available yet when January 1st rolls around, which most people don't have it all, all bundled ahead of time. But file some of those initial forms using the estimated data and come back afterwards and go in with the actual once it's available.
And you guys are actually doing that for them. So
No.
how do they give you that information?
No, we're actually working with them side by side as they're filling out the FAFSA and any other forms online with them. You know, they're inputting the numbers. But actually, what we found is a lot of times some of those questions are very confusing. A decimal point missed here or there can determine at least an error, if not an outright denial of financial aid. So we'll be working with them as they're trying to get the information to put into the online application themselves. It's one of those things, having done it enough times, that you start to understand the questions, and a lot of times our clients will come back and say, well, I was inputting the data, what does this mean? Well, it means this. So they feel much more, you're using the word confident more than anything, but going back and actually doing the correct thing.
Now, other than FAFSA, is there any other scholarships or grants or anything like that at the college level that people should know about?
Well, there's actually another financial aid filing form that a lot of schools, roughly 300, 350 of the private schools use. It's called the CSS profile.
Okay.
So in addition to the FAFSA, they require that you fill out that information as well. It's a little more of a deeper look into some of your financial aspects, and that's typically for the schools that, again, giving out their own endowment money, not federal money. So they're a little more careful in understanding your situation before they hand out some of that money.
And is there anything specific on that form compared to the FAFSA form?
Well, it's a good point. That is sometimes where what's on the FAFSA is a little bit different than what's on the CSS profile, and people interpret them differently sometimes. So that's where we try to have that conversation with the client as they're coming back and saying, well, what does this mean? And I thought we filled that out over here. Is it consistent? You do want that consistency, but as Martin was saying, sometimes it becomes a little bit more invasive on the CSS profile. So we often find families coming back and saying, why are they asking for that? It's a little bit more detailed. It's a little bit further reaching into the back in time as far as asking about income from previous years.
So do people make mistakes on that form compared to the FAFSA form?
Statistics say that combined, roughly 70% or slightly higher than 70% of the forms actually have errors on them.
Really?
So again, that's where we try to give our clients a higher level of confidence that it's getting done properly, just by going through that process with them on it. Yeah.
And it's a delay of getting financial aid if they send the form back to you because it was filled out incorrectly. And like anything, as Martin was mentioning before, it's a first come, first served basis on financial aid. So that's why you want to be proactive and consistent and make sure what you're sending in is accurately filled out.
Wow. So what's happening at the college level? What are they doing on the financial aid side of things? Do you know that?
Once the FAFSA or the CSS profile gets submitted, it goes to the schools that the students have applied for. Once they review them, and their financial aid officer will send out an award letter, and that tells the family what kind of aid the school is going to be offering them. And that's where we kind of come back in the picture at that point and help the families actually understand what's being presented to them in those letters, because a lot of times they're very confusing. They might look like, if you look only at the bottom line number of the school says they're going to provide, it looks like they're giving you a full ride, but a lot of it is actually loans or work study kind of programs that may not be as attractive as the number as they're trying to make it look to you.
Really? So
Yeah.
so some families are getting loans automatically from the school. Is that pretty much how it's working sometimes?
Well, we've seen everything from like a prepackaged plus loan within the award letter, which is really any sort of loan that could have been obtained by the family themselves without the college's
And
help.
that has interest rate on it?
It does, it does. And there's some wonderful loan rates out there that you want to take advantage of. And that's another area that we try to work with our families on, is to understand if it's not going to be outright aid, what are the other options, the strategies that are associated with paying for college if you have to go into things like a loan or a work study program. What does that really mean? And again, how does that change from year to year? And I think that getting back to that year after year, we need to be talking and have the communication with the family because things change. There's some wonderful opportunities that the colleges provide in the way of work study and other loans and scholarships and grants, but you want to know what that really means. And we have the ability to see what the colleges have done in the past, and based upon what the family is bringing to the table with the award letter, say, is that consistent with what the college has done in the past? And the colleges are doing their best to make it affordable, and it is one of those things where you just want both sides to meet at a happy sort of situation.
We find too that schools will actually compete with each other in terms of financial aid as well. So if you've got I use the example of Lehigh and Lafayette a lot too. Similarly priced schools and geographically located near each other, they will oftentimes, again, compete over students. So if your student gets admitted to Lehigh, for example, but really wanted to go to Lafayette, you can take that offer from the school he is admitted at over to the other and say, hey, will you guys match this? My son would really, or daughter would really like to go to your school instead.
Wow.
And sometimes they will.
So it becomes a little competition between the colleges.
Yeah, they are businesses after all, and they are looking to.
I just think you need to know how everything works and understand sort of the time frames and to be consistent with everything that's going on, because it can be a very emotional time. It can be a very anxiety-ridden time, and it's a lot on the line, and there's a lot of pressure.
Is there anything that the colleges give that students don't have to pay back?
Oh, well, the grants and scholarships. Again, you want to understand, is that a situation that's just for the first year, freshman year? How does it translate through all the 4 years? What are some of the specifics, GPA you have to maintain to actually keep that scholarship? So you want to understand, if you are not going to have to be paying that back, what does it mean that you have to do to maintain it? So you don't want to arrive at school and then have an issue the second year where that's a very expensive bill that didn't show up in the first year, but now it's showing up in the second year.
And they do that?
Well, it's spelled out in the awards letter, but sometimes what we've seen, the people are so happy with the award and they got in, they don't really read the fine print a lot of times to say, okay, what does this mean going forward? And sometimes the workload can be increased as time goes on, where what was simple in freshman year is more difficult in sophomore year, and that might affect the GPA situation. So you really want to understand all the aspects of what you're getting into.
Oh. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, so could you give our audience what you feel they should get out of this interview with you guys?
Well, really there's never a bad time, or it's never too late to begin looking at this process. Even if you feel like you're up against a deadline now, like I mentioned, January 1st for the seniors in high school at this point, they may feel like it's too late to try to get a handle on it, but it really is not. There's still time to do that, and it's also never too early. If you want to come to us when you're in high school, we can help you get a better handle on things, spend more time looking on the admissions piece of it and college matching, as well as developing the financial planning part of it, so that you have that high level of confidence knowing how you're actually going to get through this.
Good. And lastly, your contact information again is what?
We can be found on the web at www.premiercollegefundingllc.com. And our telephone number, again, hopefully is on the screen at this point. And other than that, you may see us with various different workshops throughout New Jersey. We tend to run about 2 a month around the sort of the Mercer, Hunterdon, Somerset area, so definitely out there.
Great. So thank you very much. Again, my name is Anthony Uva. I'm the host for Secrets of College Planning. Thank you.